Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show mind-body medicine practitioner and the founder of Red Path Spiritual Healing Retreats, Dr. Andrea Lucie. So in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from her childhood in the Andes, the ancient healing of her native tribe, her journey to America, training Marines, her own powerful mental health story, discovering ayahuasca, healing veterans and first responders, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of over 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Dr. Andrea Lucie. Enjoy. Well, Dr. Andrea, I want to start by saying two things. Firstly, thank you to Angela and Tim for making this connection from the Siren Project. And secondly, I want to welcome you today onto the Behind the Shield podcast.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It was a surprise. I don't usually like to do these things, but you're doing a great job. That's what Angela and Tim, and I love those two, and I trust them. So here I am. So thank you for the invitation, for considering me to speak with you.
Well, thank you for the trust. I mean, that means a lot, truly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, very first question. Where on planet Earth are we finding you today?
Right now, I am in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I arrived from Chile yesterday, and I was there for 15 days visiting family. But I came back yesterday to Puerto Vallarta. That's where home is right now.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, let's start in Chile. Let's start at the very beginning of your journey then. So tell me where you were born and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
Sure. I'm glad you didn't ask me what year I was born.
That's our secret.
It's okay. Yeah, I was born in Chile. My family is from the south of Chile, from a place called Mulchen. Which is in the 8th region of Chile. And I think I was about 4 years old when my mom took me to the south of Chile where she was born and left me with my grandparents. My dad left when I was very young, maybe 2 years old. So she couldn't work with me being so little. So she took me to the south of Chile, left me with her mom and dad. And I stayed there for a few years, pretty much until I was 10 years old, I believe. And then I went back to Santiago to live with my mom and to be educated in the city. But the biggest impact, I guess, and why that is related to what I do now is my upbringings with my grandparents who were curanderos. They were healers. They come from the native tradition of the Mapuche tribe, which is Mapu means earth and Che means people, which is people of the earth. And we live in a small farm, no electricity, no water, and live off the land without any distraction from the city and the, I guess, electronics. And my grandparents were farmers, but at the same time, they were the healers of the small community. So people will come and they will do their thing, using herbs. They didn't use what we call psychedelic medicine, but they did use the rituals and the natural medicine. And they treated things like espanto, el susto, or what is called the frightening of PTSD. Or they will call, what else? so many affections. It could be illness from what we call it from the mind, or it could be actual physical illnesses. And that was my normal. That's how I grew up. That's the medicine that I knew. But then when I moved to Santiago as a teenager, I missed so much being with my grandparents, but I got wrapped up in the modern, I guess, upbringings, schooling. Then I moved to the US, and then everything changed. So how much more would you like me to tell you about my childhood?
Well, let's go back even further then. What is the history within the tribe of the
Mhm.
healing and using some of these holistic, healing therapies? Because one of the things that's so
Mhm.
maddening at the moment is, and I think now we're opening our eyes, but up until 10 years ago, any sort of holistic healing method, chiropractic, acupuncture, herbal medicine, was vilified by modern medicine a lot of times. And yet that's such an crazy, arrogant way of looking at it because it's survived millennia. So obviously there's something to it. So what is the origin story of the healing in your tribe?
Mhm. Well, I will have to say that the issue began with the Spaniards conquering, discovering and conquering, the countries, and imposing the Christians, Catholic beliefs about all the rituals and ceremonies the native performed were evil. And so they kind of went underground and they resurfaced in a way that it was called syncretism, where some part of the Catholic religion are mixed with the native traditions. And in the native tradition, specifically for the Mapuche tribe, it's a very matriarchal society where the assigned healer of the tribe or the community is called Machi, and the Machi is actually a female, always has, always will. However, a male, physically male figure can fulfill the role of the Machi, but they do dress with the traditional Machi clothing, the clothes. So it never actually died off. It went underground and it was passed on from generation to generation. However, with the colonization, and with that became the shaming of these practices, and the natives separated from the mestizos, which is the mix with the Spaniards and European. As you know, Chile and Argentina and all these South American countries, we have a lot of migration, not only the original colonizers from Europe, Spain, but also later on, we have a lot of German, French, and Italian immigrants. So people and society in general that were mixed with these Europeans looked down to the pure blood natives. And I think this happened in all societies right around the world. So even that was a major reason for this native tradition to actually do go underground and to be only practiced in the small community. My grandparents, they never spoke about their native roots, although my grandmother used to speak Mapuntungun, which is the original language, which is the Mapuche language. But even now in my own family, there is such a huge distinction between the ones that are mixed and the ones that are more purebred. And there is a sense of like, oh, those are Indian, those are Mapuches. And that comes from that conditioning from the migration, the immigrants into our countries, and feeling like the natives are savages and they're not worthy of looking into what they have to say and their beautiful wisdom. So my grandparents walked the line of really incorporating some of those rituals that come from the Mapuche lineage, but at the same time, the syncretism was present when they involved the Catholic prayers and rituals as well. So it's a really thin line. Now, in Chile, there is a clear distinction. Mapuche and Mapuche medicine, they are present in most of the hospitals in Chile, where
Oh,
they have
really?
where they have the option to actually have the traditional biomedical allopathic method of medicine, but they also have, especially in communities that are very close to the Mapuches, which is the 8th, 9th region in the south of Chile, but also even in Santiago, the capital, there is an adjunct location where they can, if they feel and they know, we all have Mapuche roots, unless you were absolutely born in Europe, you have Mapuche roots. Now, it doesn't matter what percentage, right? But if you feel like you want to be treated by a Machi or by that kind of medicine, then you can do that. So but it's an incorporation, and it's an appreciation, a validation of this medicine, this ancient medicine. I think we're waking up to that fact that it's important to understand that when we work with nature, we reconnect not only with nature, but with ourselves, that we are part of it. And it is important, that process in the healing process.
You mentioned about immigrants coming from all over Europe, and one of the things people think of when they think of South America and Germany is some of the Nazis fleeing after World War II. But I would imagine that, it's not all that there were just people from Germany fleeing as well, from Poland, etc. So what did you see as far as generationally, as far as that part, kind of during post-World War II and the immigration from Europe then?
Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly the day, but it was in the late 1800s, I think 1890, I'm not sure. And one of the presidents of Chile allowed European immigrants to settle in the very south of Chile, which I believe it was in the Patagonia. And these settlers, they were given this large amount of land, and they were actually they were farmers, but they grew sheep, cattle, and actually that area of Chile was populated by native Chileans, and they were exterminated by the settlers because the natives never believed that the land belonged to them. They are part of the land, therefore they take care of it. But then the settlers that were given these pieces of land, they travel from Europe, and they have these thousands of acres to grow and to raise sheep and lambs, and they needed to get rid of the natives because the natives were against, obviously, what they were doing. So not only from that history, other settlers and other not only Germans and Polish, like you say, and Italian and other. And remember also that Chile, before the Panama Canal, there was no other ways to actually go up to the other side of Latin America. You have to go all the way down to Chile. So they stopped in Chile in two ports that were very important. So some of those merchants, they stay there. And that's how we become kind of hybrid because they stay in Chile. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
No, you did. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I want to go back to, you mentioned that your father left when you were 2, your mother left you with your grandparents for quite a long time. Knowing, as we will get into it later in this conversation, that childhood trauma or childhood struggles are a big factor of men and women in the military and the first responder professions. Did you lean into, or did your grandparents kind of offer up the healing for your mental, your emotional well-being with the therapies that they used, being a child who in theory had lost both parents for a while?
I think obviously what they did and how they raised me had a huge impact in my upbringings. I was always a very introspective, introverted child. And when I went back with my mom to Santiago, it was really difficult for me to reinsert myself insert myself into the society and to actually, see what is out there. There are cars, there is electricity, there are telephones and TVs and radios, none of that. I didn't grow up with none of that. For me, it was just being in nature, playing with the animals, climbing trees, very naive. So it was a really cultural shock for me to go back to the city. And at the same time, going back to my mom, that I was a single mom who works pretty much 24/7, and I was by myself day and night, and it was really. I mean, I can say now, I can look back and say, well, that was difficult, but back then I didn't know any better. This is the way it is, to live in a small room full of cracks in the ceiling and the walls, and sharing one bathroom with 6 or 7 different families. To me, that was normal. That was normal. And in just one room with one bed and maybe a little stove to cook. That was normal for me. I thought everybody lived like that in Santiago. Then obviously growing up and becoming a teenager, and my mom was very, how do you say? She didn't want me to be on the street. So I would stay home, and I really didn't have any social life other than going from home to school. So I immersed myself in books, just reading books and writing, and just being very introspective. So I didn't realize until I finished high school, when I was 16 or 17, that there was a big world out there where people will go to parties, people will have TVs, people will have radios, will have all these amenities that I wasn't aware of. And it was such a shock for me. And I wanted all that, but at the same time, we couldn't have it because we didn't have any money. That's why she took me to my grandparents in the first place, because she couldn't deal with having a child. And back in those days, being a single mom, my mom and dad never got married. So being a single mom for her was ostracizing, and society looked down upon her. So it was difficult. I guess if you look back now, it was difficult. But that actually paved the way for me to my being introspective. And I'm very introverted, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how did that love of books end up sending you to the US?
Actually, no, it wasn't the love for a book, it was the love for a guy.
Oh, there we go. Me too. Yeah. Not a guy, though, a woman.
It will be okay. So it was the love for another human being, actually. I met this guy actually, I was doing pretty well since I finished, high school, 16, 17 years old. We didn't have money to go to college, but I did go to school to become a nurse. And so I was pretty young. But anyways, I was doing okay financially. I was taking my mom out of the place where we were living together. We moved probably between the age of 10 to 20. We moved 10 times, 11 times, because we couldn't pay the rent. So in the middle of the night, my mom would say, okay, time to go. And we'll pick up our bed and little belongings, put it in a little car, and let's go and move to another place. But I was doing well, money-wise, I was doing really well. And I met a guy who was American. And we started dating, and, the next is history. I ended up going to the United States. And that was another cultural shock for me, because I was very still sheltered by the Chilean society. And we went to North Carolina. And he was a Marine, of course. And it didn't work out. It wasn't exactly what I thought. Obviously, I have no idea about the American culture and society. I didn't have any clue about the ways of living. It was so different that the cultural shock really rocked the relationship, and we just didn't stay together. However, I was really embarrassed to go back to Chile and felt like a failure. I was pretty young. So I decided that I was going to stay in the U.S. and suck it up and become, an immigrant and do whatever I had to do to survive, which was pretty fun, actually, because I started working in a donut shop. It wasn't Daylight Donut, it was another one. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, I was working in the back of the donut shop, washing dishes, and since then I can't eat any donuts. But
I can't think of a more American place to start working than a donut shop.
I know. I was in the back washing, the trays, and I hate the smell. But anyways, and after that, I got another job cleaning rooms in a local hotel. And but all this happened within 10 months of me being in the US, so I didn't speak any English. And I have to say, this is kind of funny. I learned English by watching TV, MTV. what else could I do? I was at home alone. I didn't speak English. What can I do? So I watched MTV, and I was very young. So Beavis and Butthead. Those two were my English teachers. And the second people that actually taught me English were the Marines, because I was right outside Marine Corps base, and I started working on base in a little laundromat with a Mexican guy who actually gave me a job there. And then I started going to the gym and learning English from the Marines. So imagine, between Beavis and Butthead and the Marines, what kind of English I spoke. But
it was really mix. Fun. Profanity and cornholio.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I learned English pretty much within 10 months. But little by little, I went stepping up, I guess, into that you call the American dream of immigrant. And that's how I got involved with the Marines. I was working in the laundromat on base, and I was working out at the gym. And somebody told me, hey, you look great, because I used to do aerobics for myself. And they told me, why don't you work here at the gym? And so I did. And that's how my career began, with working in a Marine Corps base, which then, step by step, I move up very quickly in the system.
That's amazing, because I thought you went through the academic route and then found yourself in the military, but it was the reverse. So
no.
I know you have a doctorate in mind-body medicine. So talk to me about what that even looks like.
Oh, my God. So while I was working, actually, I went to school. So I was doing both things. I was working all day, and then I started going to school at night. So I began with psychology. Then I moved from psychology to anthropology. From anthropology, I went to do a master at the University of Colorado. University of North Carolina in Wilmington. Mm-hmm. University of Colorado came later. And I was always very interested in working with people that I was driven to people that had trauma. But I approached that from the beginning from a different perspective, from the physical fitness. So it was physical wellness. But then I transitioned to the mind-body medicine, which it is understanding the connection of, if you have something going on, emotional and psychological, how that's going to have an impact in your physical body, and vice versa. So understanding that interaction and how to approach it, how to work with that, to work with the symptoms, but without medication. So it will be through movement, through nutrition, supplementation, and different techniques, right? Like biofeedback, neurofeedback. It was a career, actually, that it involves so much of what I have been trained already before, actually, I went into my doctorate, that everything that I have learned working and living among the military base and my education was pretty much everything that I was learning in my doctorate. Because I truly believe now my personal past at this point resurfaced, so my personal traumas and experiences as a child resurfaced. And that was the catalyst for me to understand that trauma, it is something that you can heal unless you involve the spiritual processes. You can cure a disease, but you can't heal a disease. So, and this is a disease of the soul. It was my grandparent who called the susto, the frightening, or soul fragmentation, or soul lost. So that's when I understood, because my own symptoms actually were resurfacing. My own symptoms with PTSD. I have been diagnosed with PTSD, and I recognized my symptoms when I was talking to the Marines and sailors that I work with. And that was back in 2006. That was a long time ago.
You talked about going to the gym, but then you talked about the truly holistic upbringing that you had with your grandparents, and that, movement was just, running and climbing trees and all those things. Was there a moment when you realize that in like city society, because you couldn't have the moment, there was a thing called a gym that people would do for exercise instead? Because that must have been really strange, even the concept of a gym for someone who grows up in the wilderness as you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And yeah, there was a need, but I wasn't aware back then. I wasn't aware of my own trauma. I knew that I have gone through some very traumatic events, but I have normalized them. And also, as you know, my clientele, my patients now, they compartmentalize, tuck those little boxes away with memories and say like, I'm not dealing with you, or this didn't happen to me, or this actually didn't affect me. But what I was doing actually was my body needed to release this trauma, this energy that was stuck in my system. And that was probably why intuitively I was drawn to do exercise so much, because I did a lot of exercise. I became a fitness instructor working with the Marines, doing exercise 2 or 3 times a day for them, for the units. But it was a need for my body to release this embodied, encapsulated in energy from that intensive trauma and loss that I had as a child. Because it wasn't just the loss of my father, who first is gone, and then he was killed. He was shot in the head in a very traumatic way. And then realizing how traumatic it was for me to leave my family behind. And in between, growing up, sustaining some physical abuse and some sexual trauma as well, being molested and by family members and by people that were supposed to be friends and caregivers. So all that was stuck in my body. And somehow, intuitively, my body wanted to release that. So I guess that is why my intuition guided me into this path of physical fitness and wellness, where it kind of emerged with later on what my grandparents have taught me. And it was inside of me already, knowing that that holistic way of addressing these traumas is the only way to actually help heal the spirit and the soul.
What about yoga? How did you find yourself getting into that?
That's kind of funny because I was working in Camp Lejeune. In 2006 is when I was heavily involved. I was already escalated to be like a program director of one of the Semper Fit programs in Camp Lejeune, which is the mobile unit going out to do exercise for the units. And that's when we realized that the guys were coming back from war with invisible injuries that were very difficult to treat. And so I was involved with a program at the Naval Hospital called Back on Track that treated this PTSD mainly and TBI with a holistic approach. And they actually asked me if I can do something, as I was running the Semper Fit program in Camp Lejeune. They asked me if I could do something with the Back on Track program. And so I said, well, we can do meditation, we can do yoga, we can do mixed martial arts, we can modify it. We can do everything that the program right now is offering. We can just change and tweak and make sure that the warriors, they're able to do it, modify it in a sense. So that's how I got involved. I started doing yoga out of intuition, and that was probably a few months into it that I got really involved into it. I really love, but all of this is out of intuition. So I have no, I guess, a certification of formal training. But the Marines and sailors were very responsive to yoga. And I was actually incorporating not only yoga, but mixed martial arts and boxing and meditation. And that's when actually I met David Emerson and Bessel van der Kolk. He was the director for the, what is it called? Justice Resource Center in Boston, Massachusetts. So actually, Bessel was visiting the Back on Track program in Camp Lejeune. And he came and took a class with all the other Marines and sailors one morning. And I have no idea who Bessel was. He wasn't as famous as he is now. He's going to hate me for saying that. Sorry, Bessel. But he came to the class, and then he came up to me. He said, hey, that's great what you're doing. You know that we do some training at the center in Boston. And I said, sure, I would love to go and do some training for myself and for my instructors so we can offer this yoga to all the wounded warriors. So I did. I contacted the director, David Emerson, and they went actually down to Camp Lejeune. So I brought them down to Camp Lejeune, and they offered this big, certification for trauma-sensitive yoga. And they were very surprised because we actually had a huge program, but nobody really had the certification, right? It was just out of intuition. How do we modify this? How do we present yoga to the Marines? But anyways, that's how we began the relationship with not only with yoga, but actually also with David and with Bessel van der Kolk. And later on, me and a couple of Marines went to present at a conference there. And then from there, for a few years down the road, I began doing some a small portion of the training that Bessel had and the center had for clinicians. So teaching how do you talk to veterans, how do you teach yoga for veterans and all that. But the funny thing is, when I actually went to do my own certification, I hated it. I was in Old Town Alexandria, and it was very kind of, they're going to hate me for saying this, snobby, It was different. So here I was right beside the News River, doing yoga, on the grass with the Marines and sailors, and it was yoga for real people, I guess. And then I am in a studio, and it just didn't feel right. But I did get the certification. I paid a lot of money for it, and then I couldn't do yoga anymore. It was fake to me. I couldn't. But then I reconcile, and it always happened to me that I learned something that it doesn't align with my intuition and my inner wisdom. But then I have to sit with it and then reconcile with it and say, okay, this is my validation, my certification, or my doctorate, right? But this is what my upbringing says. This is what my intuition, my higher wisdom, and what my ancestors are telling me. So I am going to do this. But I'm going to take into consideration what I learned. And that was my relationship to yoga, actually.
It's interesting that you talk about intuition, because this is something that I've noticed within myself. I don't wear any wearables or anything like that. And they absolutely have the place. My wife has some, the kind of, I forget what they even turn out, but the wearable on her watch where it counts her steps, and she does the app where she puts in her food. So it works for her. But what worries me about that whole technological side is that you lose the ability to just listen to your body. And I've always been very, very holistic and just feel, okay, today is probably the day I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm just going to walk the dog. I'm going to listen to my body. I need a little extra rest. Or for some reason now I'm craving a lot more meat today. So, all right, I'll eat more meat. And I think there's a lot of value in, again, going, rediscovering ancient humans and how incredible the human body actually is, and it wants to heal, and it knows when it's thirsty or hungry or needs more movement or needs more rest. So talk to me about that as we progress more and more into the world where computers are telling us about our body. Talk to me about the importance of that intuition and for us to be able to tap back into that.
That is what life is about. We are pure intuition. We are pure consciousness. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole because I know what people's going to think of me. I don't care.
Go down it. Slide down it.
So here we go. No. We are pure consciousness. We are pure energy. That we are in this shape and this form, in this physical suit, right? Having a human experience in this beautiful physical house called Earth, planet Earth, and this life, in this physical life. But our job as human beings with consciousness actually is connect to that consciousness and to realize that we are consciousness. And this brain that we have is part of that physical process, and it's part of that physical element and environment that allow us to experience life in this planet. But our job is to realize that we are way more than that we have this beautiful core that connects us to that higher wisdom and intuition, to the sacred and to the source. If we get distracted, and we get distracted by technology and by all the things that our brain have created, our brains collectively we have created, including technology, then we get farther away from that consciousness. And we begin to act only based on this in what we have created. And that pulls us away from the source. And what is that source? Is the connection to the higher self, to the true consciousness that we are, is the connection to nature. We are part of it. And we isolate ourselves from nature, from other people, and from our higher self. And when we are disconnected is when we feel there's something that is not in harmony, that is misaligned, that is missing. And some people call that, the midlife crisis, maybe. Or some people call that, whatever it is. You can coin it, you can name it any way you want to, but all human beings, we do have an opportunity to wake up, to realize that we have lost that connection and that our purpose, our job in this beautiful schoolhouse called physical life in planet Earth is actually to learn from our, not only from these life lessons, to release this attachment, these koshas, these karmas, these layers of experiences that we have in this life, and also our ancestors and our past lives, and actually move inward, not outward, move inward towards that consciousness. And when we get close and hopefully get to live life with absolute consciousness and as conscious human being, then everything aligns and we have a direct connection with the universe that is not out there. We look at the stars and the universe is there, it's here. And that's when everything heals and flows harmoniously. But to get there is very difficult because we have created steps and barriers instead of using them. Like you say, your wife, my husband does the same thing. He wanted one of those freaking watches and I gave him one for Christmas. But what happened is then yes, you use your mind to be like bobbleheads, being up here, living from this head space, and not really understanding that the true wisdom comes from that consciousness that you are and that you have disconnected.
I will ask you this at the end. I always ask people, what do you do to decompress? And I would say 75, well, if it's not them talking about spending time with their family, then the other answer or the answer instead is some sort of being out in nature. And so there's that yearning to reconnect. And I think we saw the negative side during the pandemic when a lot of people were told to stay in their homes and don't go outside and don't be around the people that you love and don't move and, get bad food delivered to your house. I mean, everything, that we know is going to heal was held from people. So in the learn what not to do, the pandemic was a good example of what the real pillars of health are, and being outside and being connected to people, and meditation and reducing stress and sleeping well and movement. I mean, these are all things that we know are so important. So it was so glaring during that time of what we are being withheld from and what we need to lean back into. And I've said even the obesity crisis, the mental health crisis. We're going to get into some really powerful healing modalities in a minute. But if we just went back to 100 years ago where people grew food and they had to walk, to and from work, and, they had community and they're in a small town, that in itself would move the needle immensely on our physical and mental health. And the more disconnected we get from the real world, really, the fatter, the sicker, the more depressed, and the more anxious we become.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. I also say to my groups, and what I share with them is what my mentors have shared with me, and also coming from my own intuition and my background as a child growing up in the farms. I call a farm was a small cabin with 2 rooms and a piece of land that we grew our vegetables. Um, it's the sense of community is so important. I spend more time in the US than in Chile. So I consider myself a product of that society, which is it's pretty much all over the world. It's not just the US, right? But the conditioning to be independent, to self-preservation, and the lack of communitas, and how important it is to actually help each other out in every possible way, to serve other people, to be able to volunteer, but not from that head space because you want to bring the light onto you, but actually truly from the heart. And what I do, it's for my own well-being. I do spend a lot of time in the ocean. I love to go to the beach. That's my happy place. But I also, what I do is volunteer. I serve food with a group of volunteering and practice gratitude. That's one thing that I really push my groups and the people that come to see me to understand how blessed you are. You have no idea to get up and count your blessing. Just opening your eyes and be able to take a deep breath is such a blessing. And count your blessing and be grateful for what you have. And remember that you only have 5 basic needs. Everything else is a blessing. So communities, being in nature, serve other communities, excuse me, being of service to others from the heart space, giving yourself to others and counting your blessing. Every day being grateful for what you have. You don't have to come from a really poor upbringing to really value what you have now, because what you should value is not all that material, physical stuff, that it can be gone at any time, and to create such attachment, a strong attachment to these things. But what you have right now is not about giving it value, but it's just being grateful. Grateful that you have it and grateful that you can share it with other people as well.
Yeah, I think we talk about conditioning in the Western world. One of the biggest issues I see, and I would say, we are the worst in America as far as, what's pumped through our screens is that sense that you still don't have enough. No matter what you've got, oh, but you don't have this, oh, but you don't have that, but your house isn't big enough, but you don't have a speedboat, whatever it is, the MTV Cribs mentality. And it is destructive because, as you've alluded to how people are living in, Santiago or in the jungle, comparatively, the safety, the comfort that we have, even if you're not that well off in the US, is still incredible compared to, if you're living in Syria or Gaza or, wherever at the moment. There are people that their house doesn't even exist. It's just a pile of rubble. So if you woke up and you've got a roof over your head and there's food in the fridge, you're doing so well, so well. And I love, someone was telling me the other day that there's 2 types of people, citizens and civilians. And they said a citizen just lives in a country. That's it. They use the resources, they live, they wake up, they go to work, they come home. A civilian is someone, I've got that wrong. A civilian just lives in the country. A citizen is someone who actually gives in that country. So they understand what they've got. They're grateful for what they've got. And then they're like, how can I be part of a community? How can I lift someone up, with my mentorship, with my volunteerism, etc. And I love that mentality. If you can look in the mirror and say, what can I do today that will benefit someone other than myself? If we all did that, 340 million people did that, we would completely revolutionize the way we look at things. But if we just turn on the television and we're angry about the opposite political party and we think that this group of people are trying to take all our money through welfare or whatever it is, we're missing the entire point. We woke up today. That in itself is a gift because a lot of people didn't. So I think if you could infuse one thing into the Western world, it would be gratitude, and it would be life-changing.
Exactly. And take for sorry, take for example, what happened in Puerto Vallarta. I have no idea. I don't watch the news. And I don't do social media. So I was in Chile when all this happened here in Mexico. And what I receive, and I'm very grateful that so many people care enough to send me texts and messages when I was in Chile, asking me how I was doing, thinking that I was in Puerto Vallarta when this happened on Sunday. And they send me pictures and videos like, oh my God, Puerto Vallarta disappeared. It's pretty much like a war zone. I got home yesterday. I went to Costco to get some, I don't know even what. I was actually curious about to see how Costco was burned down. Nothing. Everything's absolutely fine. But I guess this stuff sells on TV, so people think that that's what is going on. But the point is, what I see and what I have seen in these small communities is people actually working with each other to create a better space for the society. The group that I volunteered with, they went out on Wednesday and they serve food. They share food with, the people that want to come, and they have less resources, and they came out and ate, a warm meal or whatever in downtown. But small gestures of every day. I get up today and I go outside and I clean the entire street. May not be like a big thing, right? Well, I'm bettering my environment and the environment for my neighbors. Do I get upset about that? Sometimes I do, because they throw trash in the grass or on the floor or whatever. But I also know that my neighbors work all day long and they're not here, the ones that are around me. So, and a small gesture is just go outside and who cares? I'm going to clean the entire block. But what if, that is just a small analogy, but what if we just get off of our head and our egos and say, I'm just going to do something that is going to benefit others and it's going to benefit us as a society. We can all do a little part in that. We will have such a different place to live. This world will be so much different. But like you said, we get caught up on these politics and divisiveness, and we send this negative, dark, low frequency vibration into the world that feeds into it.
I'm developing a TV show at the moment from books that I wrote, and the theory behind it is simply, if we want to bring kindness back and community, then that involves healing. Because when I see the divisiveness and the nastiness and, the addiction that then is forced into the underworld because of drug prohibition, and now we have cartels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all of that screams trauma to me. So to me, I think we have a global mental health crisis in a generation where really a lot of people should be living comfortably. We should be doing extremely well because the technology that we've got and the understanding and the communication, there's a potential for us to be thriving as a species is better now than ever in one respect. What is your perspective of that when you do come across some of these things that are happening around the world? What is your perspective of the root of that being unaddressed trauma of when these men and women were small?
So I believe that we are actually experiencing what is called the Great Change. And I talk to my groups that come to the retreats with me. This unsettling, this divisiveness, this polarization, it's the preamble of people actually wanting to stay asleep and people actually wanting to wake up. To wake up that we have that consciousness. We all do. We are equipped with that consciousness, but maybe it's not your time to wake up, and that's okay too. I am not going to shake you up and say, please wake up. No, that's the most awful thing to do when somebody's sleeping, right? To go and shake them up and wake them up. No, really. It's in their own time. But this is the process of waking up, and there's a prophecy. It's called the Great Pachacutec, which is the time for the Great Change, where 500 years of darkness is coming to an end. And we begin to wake up, to understand that we are conscientious human beings equipped with this beautiful gem that you can connect through the heart into the source. the consciousness that I'm talking about. And some people are listening and answering that call, and some others are not. But those of us that have waken up and doing the work, we need to share it, but in a very subtle, loving, compassionate way, not hitting people, with something in the head. And I have to say that's one of the reasons why I don't do podcasts. And I don't do because I hate seeing all these people that are like, oh my God, I have this medicine and I have this incredible awakening and you should do it and this and that. That's not the way to do it. That's not the way. Don't talk. Shut your mouth and do the work. I always say, be the change that you want to see in the world. I didn't say that. It's somebody else's quote. If you're doing your work, do it yourself, internally, quietly, and then be a better human being and create a ripple effect. Just be the change you want to see in the world, and don't start shouting around like evangelists in the corner of in your street. I'm sorry for saying that. But just be the change and be the example. That's it, in a loving way.
I love that. I want to go back to when you met Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote "The Body Keeps the Score." Up until that point, you've been very intuitive as far as your journey and realizing that there's a physicality, physical expression to some of the trauma that you've got, bottled up still. Talk to me about that interaction when you meet someone more kind of from the psychological, scientific side that's validating, or not even validating, it's the wrong word because you already knew in your heart, but had put it out in a scientific way as far as the connection between the physical and the mental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So back then, 2006, 2007, Bessel wasn't as famous as he is now. Like he's a major player in this, I guess, awareness of the body actually holding on to traumas and experiences. So for me, it was just somebody else that came to take my class. I was doing my thing in Camp Lejeune, working with the veterans, with the wounded warriors, and literally doing my thing. I had no expectation, no desire. And there was nothing else in my life other than I'm here with my guys that are traumatized, and we're doing a great job where, the guys are coming out of their barracks, they're doing exercise again, they're becoming, human beings, more involved. And then when I met Bessel, it's like, okay, well, he's another doctor because he's a psychiatrist. He's another doctor that is coming to check out what I'm doing here. And I didn't think anything of it. But then when I went to Boston and I trained, they came down to train us in trauma-sensitive yoga. We were invited actually to speak at the conference. I think it was 2008, the 19 International Trauma Conference, I think that was the name. And I realized that this guy is really onto something. He's actually putting in verbalizing and articulating what I feel. I am not really good. I hate writing, honestly. I have to write so much for school. But I am more like the person that sits down and feel. And so I really admire his ways of articulating exactly what it was in my heart and in my mind. Back then, I had a few interactions with him, obviously I went a couple of times, 3 times, I can remember, to actually do the part of doing yoga or working with clinicians that were working with veterans. And I admire that. I admire anybody that is able to articulate what I am feeling and what I am thinking. So that was my interaction. I guess that's what I feel about Bessel. He's done a great job articulating what I feel and what I know in my heart. The body is really keeping the score of everything that we do. And not only in this lifetime, I mentioned earlier, we bring some stuff from different lifetimes and from our ancestors as well. So, yeah, our job is to wake up and to realize that we need to release this energy that is stuck within us in this physical body.
Talk to me about the families. I know you work for the family readiness department as well. That's a lot of times the forgotten people when it comes to first responders or military. So how were you able to then start helping family members too?
Do you mean in this medicine space or before?
It's up to you, wherever you want to take this.
Well, my involvement with the family readiness was with the 2nd Raider Battalion in Camp Lejeune, the Marine Special Operations Command. It was pretty much logistic, preparing the families, I guess, physically for whatever the deployment stress brought to them. But I also incorporated the personal touch, which was as much as I could talking one-on-one with the families. I didn't develop what I really wanted to do. It was very divided between the counselors and the psychologists, and they were just working with the families. And my piece was actually more logistic. Okay, so your loved ones is going to training for 6 months, and then it's coming back for 2, and then he's gone for 6 months. That fast tempo, how is that going to affect you, but in your physical environment? And I wasn't very satisfied with just addressing the physical environment. And do you have your paperwork? Do you have your wills? Do you have this and do you have that? But when it really changed is when I moved to Puerto Vallarta. No, I take that back. Working at NICO, at the National Intrepid Center of Excellence, actually, before I went to MARSOC, I was working a little bit with the family and I understood how that affected the deployments and the training, the fast tempo, how that affected their family and how that affected the spouses. And also taking in consideration that I was myself a spouse of a Marine. And so I knew how that affected me and the people that I work with. But when I moved here to Puerto Vallarta in 2020, my intention was to do retreats also for the families and to offer and extend these programs to the spouses. And that doesn't mean only female. It could be partners, could be, it doesn't matter, just the partner, whoever is supporting the veteran. Because for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you have been holding on the space for somebody that is going to training and deployments, and you never know if that person is coming back. And how you have to deal on your own with the kids and with all we had a saying, for the spouses, that when the guy goes away and he's on deployment, then you are stuck in the house. Everything, the entire hell breaks loose, pretty much. Everything breaks down in the house. And then you have to deal with that. And then you have kids, you have to deal with the kids and with illnesses. And then not being able, in the past, you couldn't hear from your loved ones when they were on deployment. They would call you maybe once a month. It wasn't now like you have the ability to text or to call anytime you want. So, of course, you are on guard. Of course, physiologically, there is a dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system because you have to be on and on alert all the time. You have to keep the fort. So it's important to offer these, I guess, modalities also to the family members because they are affected. And I'm talking about the veterans. I forgot. That is also true for law enforcement, and it's also true, obviously, for our firefighters.
Absolutely. You talked about MARSOC. You work with the high level operators. One of the things that I've started talking about, as far as this conversation and reframing it, because I don't know if you've seen the same kind of thing, but in my world, in the first responder world, when we're talking about mental health, it's still, they're broken. We need to try and fix them, try and stop them, taking their own lives, pull them from addiction. It's all a very negative story. And that's true. Like we do have to solve those things. But what I realize on the physical health side, on the mental health side, is if we reframe it to that person performing at the high level, which we are required to do as a Marine, as a firefighter, as a police officer, it's the same journey that, your meditation, your yoga and your strength and conditioning and your nutrition and your, you're addressing traumas that you buried down and maybe, psychedelic journeys that you're going to forge performance. So being a better version of yourself, having that post-traumatic growth, being more apt to be able to get into a flow state in a gunfight or searching a house for a child, that offers a lot more hope than the sad story of you're in a dark place, let's try and pull you out of the dark place. You work with these high-level war fighters. What did you see as far as these same modalities that you're doing for healing when they're coming back from war, as far as forging performance as a Marine?
It's interesting. I remember this question came several times when I was working at NICO, at the National Intrepid Center of Excellence. I was doing a lot of different techniques like biofeedback, using meditation, visualization, imagery, just different techniques in general, even yoga, Tai Chi. And they were getting into that flow state, but they were also concerned that they will be too much in that flow state, that they wouldn't be on alert and be good good warriors. And the difference in the operational side is you are actually on alert or you are aware. Two different states. When you are aware, you have 360 degrees of awareness of what is happening around. When you're on alert, you are on the activation side of the autonomic nervous system, on the sympathetic mode, which is tunnel vision. So that is a huge difference, right? But if you're calm and if you're present and if you're in the moment and you're in that flow state, you're going to be able to be a better warrior or a better whatever. So it's definitely more beneficial to be in that present awareness state as opposed to be on the alert state.
So we talked a lot about still the physical side. Talk to me about when the idea of reconnecting with your childhood, with that ancient, medicine that you'd been raised with, and exploring the world of psychedelics as a healing modality.
Yeah, actually, I was at NICO working. I have finished my work with the Wounded Warrior Detachment in Bethesda and Walter Reed. And I already had a job actually lined up to move from, I guess, the green side into the other side, more clinical side, with the NICO. And it was right before I moved to NICO, I believe it was 2009, 2010, a gentleman came to the detachment. He was looking for a nephew that was injured in Afghanistan. His name was Henry, and I call him Uncle Henry. And he was a Native American, Lakota, spiritual leader of the community. And we saw each other when he came to the detachment. And we recognized each other, I guess, from a previous life, that we fell instantly for each other. He was back then probably 86, 87 years old. We became instant friends. And he actually told me he wanted to teach me the Lakota way of healing if I wanted to go back to his farm sometimes and learn how to use the herbs and the prayers and whatever. And I said, sure, absolutely. I was working on my doctorate, so working full-time on my doctorate, writing, reading on weekends. But I took it immediately as this is something I need to do. I don't know why, but I was incorporating already very, spiritual teachings or I guess practices in my interactions with the veterans, but there was something missing, and that felt right for me to do, to learn from these men. So yeah, once I started going to Uncle Henry, he introduced me to the Soil Lodge, the sun dance, and all these Native American practices. Then I realized that, wow, that without me actually rationalizing, I don't really sit down and think about things. I'm driven by my intuition I always have. And I didn't put 2 plus 2 together. It's like, oh, I'm going back to my roots. No, I'm going to see Uncle Henry, and it feels really good that I'm going to learn about the Soil Lodge. I'm going to get there. And no, it just felt right. But that was the catalyst for my need to change, to get back to my own roots. I remember that I felt guilty at the beginning. I felt guilty because I thought, okay, wait a minute, Andrea, you have been in this path, going from this physical fitness to this psychology, and then back to this physical fitness and going to rehab, and now you are incorporating yoga. You had no business doing yoga until, because that was around the time that I am actually learning how to do proper yoga, getting the validation, getting the certificate, which is so important, right? And then I couldn't do yoga. So I have all these ideas like, why can't you just focus? And I had this internal conversation with myself. I was like, why can't you just stay focus on one thing? Why do you have to go in so many different directions? And it's like, I was so involved now with Buddhism. And And I was convinced, like, okay, I'm going to start learning traditional healings from the Lakota medicine and or the Lakota tradition. And why can't I just focus on one thing and don't even look on what else is out there? And I remember going the first time to Uncle Henry's, and he's sitting in a circle with a group of people, and he's talking about Buddhism, and he's talking about walking the middle path. And I was like, wait a minute. Uncle Henry, he's a medicine man who's done like 50 sun dances. And he's talking about Buddhism. And he's talking about the Buddha and the walking the middle path. And that gave me permission, I felt. That gave me permission to actually be okay with learning about different traditions and incorporate them, because at the end of the day, they're talking about the same thing. And so that was very interesting. That allowed me to fully immerse myself in what Uncle Henry wanted to share with me, which was such a beautiful gift. But anyway, so he was the catalyst to actually, for me to start looking inward and say, like, what is missing in my life and what is missing in my professional life is the spiritual path. So I need to resolve my own issues with my own trauma, which I had awful symptoms. One of them was rage, okay, anger. That was the worst one. And then I needed to deal with that, with my own healing. But also I needed to incorporate into my path as a professional spiritual healing and offer that to the people that I was working with. So it was during the 2012 Sundance that I got the message from the Great Spirit telling me that I needed to leave. I was already in a really weird position with my marriage where I absolutely love my ex-husband, but we were in love. And he wasn't in love either. But neither of us wanted to really call it quit. And I love my job at NICO. I love what I was doing, but it was something that it was misaligned. And I always say this, when the highway is right beside you, but you're on the side road. I fell on the side road and I wasn't flowing with the traffic on the main road. So after the Sundance, I decided that I needed to leave, and that I needed to leave everything. And I did. It was hard, but I followed the advice of Great Spirit, which it was follow the sun to Mexico. And I did. I decided to just quit my job, which I absolutely love at NICO, and to get a divorce. And I packed my car with 2 suitcases, my little Chihuahua, and I drove south and never looked back. I'm not going to say that it didn't hurt. It hurt so much to leave everything. And but I needed to find my own healing. I needed to find my way, my path, my true path, because I was on the side road. And my intuition just told me, just got to go. But Uncle Henry was the one who actually was the catalyst. And he taught me so much. He was such a generous man, such a beautiful mentor. He transitioned in 2016 or 15. Yeah. But he was the catalyst for my change.
So you're driving south, or with a car and a Chihuahua. How did that end up finding psychedelic medicine?
Well, it wasn't then. What I did is I needed to reconnect with my native roots, and I did. I reconnected with some people that practice traditional. I wouldn't say traditional healing. Yes, they do, but not with psychedelic medicine. So they're Nahuas they're my friends, and we actually work together. I invite them to participate in my retreats. So I reconnected with my root, with my native roots. Okay, doing ceremonies like the Temescal or the Soil Lodge, and going with them to the sun dances and to the vision quest and things like that. The rituals they perform. But then I went back to the US in 2015. There was something that I needed to complete there. And I don't know, again, my gut just told me, you need to go back to the US, something that you need to do there. You're not ready yet. And I went back to Camp Lejeune. That's when I was working with the MARSOC. And in 2020, during the pandemic, I was already working at the University of Colorado in a program very similar to the NICO in Bethesda, working with veterans and actually professional athletes with TBI and PTSD. And a lot of people there, and that was my intuition telling me you needed to go from MARSOC, working with the green side, go to the civilian side. Don't know why, but you need to do that because you're going to meet people there that are going to tell you that psychedelic medicine is the way to go for the veterans back then, just the veterans. And I did. I met so many people. Again, the veterans are the one that start talking about, hey, you know that ayahuasca can help us heal, right? You know that the bufo, you know that the mushrooms. And I knew about it, but I have no idea how to incorporate that, how to even bring that into the civilian clinical environment in Colorado. What I was doing was bringing them, the veterans, to do the Soil Lodge with another friend, another mentor, Goodfeather. But still there was that piece missing. And honestly, I had some beautiful moments in Colorado, but it wasn't my environment. Physically, it was cold and it was high, it was snowy. I absolutely hate the cold weather. But I needed to be there to hear from the veterans again, hey, this is what we need. And you are the one to actually open the door for it, for us. And so I did. And there's so many people, so many players in that during the 2 years that I was in Colorado. So I decided, okay, now that the pandemic is closing the doors and we're working from home, I'm going to leave and I'm going to do it. So I did. Again, I was remarried to my beautiful husband, who's a Mexican boy, he's a Mexican guy. And I told him, I said, like, guess what? We're going back to Mexico. And he's like, are you crazy? It's like, yeah, I lost my mind again. So we're going to, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Not again.
Not again. Lose your mind and sold the house in August 2020 and moved to Mexico. And I say, I'm going to do these treatments, and I'm going to offer it to the community that I know, which is the military community. And that's how I began offering these retreats. I knew the medicine, but before I began the retreats, I actually came to the understanding that I needed to open myself to my own healing. And that happened when I was before here in 2014, 14, when I was here with this group of friends that I was following around doing native ceremonies. That's when I understood that my trauma was so profound and I haven't dealt with it. I haven't dealt with all the physical sexual abuse, and I haven't dealt with abandonment. I haven't dealt with a lot of things. So anyways, I was healing myself in the process. But I knew that I needed to explore the medicine, the sacred medicine, and I went with ayahuasca. That was my first medicine. No, I lie, it was peyote. So we did hickory, but that was a beautiful experience. But with ayahuasca, it wasn't. I mean, it was a great experience, but it was very painful. Opening those boxes and actually facing all my shadows, which is, the manifestation of all the pain and trauma that I have suffered. But I understand that is necessary. It's a process of facing it, accepting it, and letting go. And that's what I did. And that's when I was ready to say, okay, now I understand how this works, and I'm going to offer this to my community, the military community. So I did. And at the beginning, I wanted to do only 4 retreats because it takes a lot of energy to actually put together the retreat in the way that I want it. Okay, it is not you come and do the medicine and then you go. Is you do a lot of different activities before the preparation, and then during the retreat, which I don't like the word retreat, but I haven't found another one. You do a lot of work during the week that you spend with me, and then you have the medicine. And then you go back and we continue with the integration process. But I wanted to do only 4 retreats. I ended up doing last year 27. So it's been crazy. It's been fast paced, but it's not how the word that I want to say. It's not an effort. It flows so naturally to do it when you're doing the way from when you're doing things from the heart space. When you do everything for love and compassion, and whoever needs to be here will be here. If at some point everything is legalized in the US and nobody when it comes to see me and do the medicine the traditional way, then that's fine too. I am absolutely fine with that. Whoever needs to be here to do it the right way, with traditional healers, with the preparation, they will be here. I am not pushing any agenda on anybody's. You will be here, you need to.
Now, with ayahuasca, specifically in Mexico, again, what's the history of that being used? What was the application in the traditional sense?
For myself?
No, just for the people in general, the people of those tribes that were using it before.
Well, okay, so going back to the beginning of our conversation, right? People that grow in the jungle, in the farms, in nature, we have such a deep connection to everything that it is. We believe, and I say we as of native backgrounds, that everything has a spirit, and everything has something to teach us, even the rocks and the water, the elements. But we need to truly listen to them. So if we spend time in nature alone, that's why Native Americans, not only the US, Canada, the US, and Latin American countries, they do vision quests. Because when you sit in silence for 4 days without food or water, you truly listen. You truly see what is going on. And that's what happened to people that live in these settings. They are able to truly listen to the plants and to the trees and to open themselves to the consciousness to receive information from nature. That's what it is there for. And they start using, think about how many combinations of plants you have to take to actually come up to ayahuasca and chacruna to have the mix and the brew called ayahuasca, right? That doesn't happen in a vacuum. That doesn't happen as a coincidence. That doesn't happen of people trying 100,000 of times, different combination. That comes out from either a dream, a vision, or a direct conversation with nature, where you receive the information from them through your consciousness. And that's how you're able to understand that this plant or this combination is used for this. And it is here to help us to heal, to release all traumas, and to actually strengthen that connection with the human side, with that consciousness that we have. So people always ask me, how did these natives realize, they can use these 2 plants to mix them and cook them or brew them to become ayahuasca? I'm just grateful that they did. And we can all do that too if we are, I don't think it's possible to do it now, but with all the technology, but to actually shut off completely and just be you, a part of the nature, and just truly listen and immerse yourself and truly listen to the environment, what nature, what earth, what elements they have to tell us, they have to teach us. And humbling ourselves, because we are so arrogant. We think that with our technology and our titles and our validation and certifications, we are all that. And no, we're not. We're not, and we're not better than an ant and a cockroach and a tree and a rock. We are part of it, and we should respect them and listen to them and live in harmony with all of that. Only then we become conscientious human beings.
Absolutely. You mentioned about this basically spawned from your work with the military. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned doing this podcast so far was, and this was outside the psychedelic space, but was the prevalence of childhood trauma in our men and women in uniform, and how a lot of times that drives us into this tribe, this wanting to be the protector, not wanting other people to feel the pain that we felt, wanting to fill our mind space with busyness and excitement so that we don't have to think about the things. And so I've heard so many times that when people have really, especially in the psychedelic space, have gone into these journeys expecting that Afghanistan or a fatal, car accident was going to be the root of their trauma, that more often than not, it was actually their formative years, their childhood, were the things that were really buried down. What have you seen as far as first responders and military, these kind of awakenings of the root of some of their struggles?
Yeah, it's very common to see childhood trauma in the first responders community and in the veterans community. Again, and nothing is a coincidence. And I don't believe that because you have childhood trauma, you are driven to join the military, let's just say the military, because you're looking for a family, a mentor, a community. Yeah, that is true. But that is true at the physical, cognitive, psychological level. Yes, that is true. But beyond that, at the spiritual level, is that your spirit knows that you need to complete a cycle. You need to close a cycle. So if you have experienced trauma, you need to release that. You may not know it, but by doing what you are doing, either being a first responder or being of service, being a police officer, firefighter, or even a veteran, somehow those experiences that you're going to have in your life are going to help you, one, to address those traumas, and two, to close those cycles of trauma. So I think it goes two levels. The psychological one, the need for finding that community, that safetyness, finding that, in the case of the military, that family that didn't embrace you, or whatever, any human being that came from a broken family, drug addiction, or whatever. But at the spiritual level, we are carrying these layers of trauma that goes sometimes beyond this physical life. And we intuitively, we're going into and putting ourselves into positions where we can close those cycles and those chapters. So it's absolutely common that pretty much everybody that comes to finding healing, they're going to have some childhood trauma. Mm-hmm.
So what are some of I'm sure there's so many, but some of the success stories that, you still remember fondly as far as the military side before we go to the first responder side?
I would say, without quoting or just thinking about one particular case, but I would say, going back to what my grandmother used to treat, and in general, most of the curanderos, the healers, which it is to help people to find pieces of the soul that are fragmented. Because when in the tradition, when you have a traumatic event, sometimes part of the soul leaves and there is fragmented, and that's why you have that sensation of feeling completely fragmented, I guess is the word, and that your soul left your body. I heard that from a few veterans. And the shaman, the curandero, the healers actually goes in, traveling to that physical, not beyond the physical dimension, traveling to that spiritual dimension, and is able to call the pieces of the soul back, and then you're whole again. The medicine can actually do the same thing. But the difference is that you are the one that is, as you have the medicine, then you're lifting the veil of the mind, and you're traveling into that beyond the physical, into the spiritual dimension, and able to call yourself those fragmented pieces of the soul and bring it back together so that you are feeling whole again. So it's an interaction between the spirit of the medicine and your own spirit. I forgot what you asked me at the end. Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I was saying some of the success stories.
The success story, yes. So among those lines, the success stories come when you see people going back to wholeness, when you see their light back into their eyes. It's easy to recognize. People used to see about veterans that have gone to war. They have their 1,000 yards there. What's it called? Yeah, there's nothing behind their eyes. They can see, but really, what is behind those eyes? And just to see the sparkle back, so just see life. I don't know if you have seen, probably you have, when somebody transcends, it's very amazing to see how that sparkle actually just dim and is gone. But you can see also people that is alive with all functioning, but still there is no sparkle in the eyes. And after the medicine, that sparkle is back. So life, soul is back. And that's the success story. It's not just one person. It's just seeing them back to be fully alive, not just existing, going through the motions and doing like a robot, they are back to be actually fully living human beings. Those are the success that I see.
One of the themes of the last book I wrote is generational trauma and kind of understanding these dominoes that were falling before us. And, if we can actually do our own healing, that we can hopefully prevent the domino falling from our children, or at least our grandchildren, and heal from both sides. From a spiritual point of view, what is the perspective on this generational trauma? Like you mentioned your childhood, but I would assume then probably there was trauma in your mother's life, in your father's life. So how is that viewed from the spiritual side?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that we come into this physical, place in this physical body to close cycles. Cycles that are not only our own from this lifetime, but I also believe that what happened to us in this lifetime, in this physical body, in this present life, is also, there is a reason for it. It's because something is unleft and undone and finished and healed from a previous life. And that this is going to sound harsh, right? But perhaps could be that what I experienced in this life, the pain of, I said, losing my father, perhaps, maybe, in a previous life, I was somebody that left somebody and that caused pain. And I came into this life to actually complete that cycle of pain and to close it. I needed to experience abandonment and to accept it and to forgive and to let it go. So then future generations in my blood lineage wouldn't have to experience that. So it's not only the trauma generation and generational trauma that we are healing. Native Americans say that you can heal 7 generations before, 7 generations after, but it's also closing cycles. And that goes into, a more extreme, I guess, difficult belief that we don't come into this life with the people that are our sibling as a coincidence. We do have already predetermined ourselves who is going to be the player in my life, who is going to be my mother, who is going to be my father, who are going to be my brothers and sisters, my boyfriend, my husband, the people that hurt me so much, right? I already know. But as soon as I transition from that source into this life, I forget. However, my intuition and my consciousness that remains should guide me to actually heal those processes, traumas from before, from in my own blood lineage. And in a different setting, obviously, in a different time, in a different physical body, I may not have been a female. I may not have been, I don't know. I don't know what I was before. But I know and I trust that my higher self, my higher consciousness, decided that I needed to live this life this way and go through all this pain and suffering so that I can heal and close those cycles so I can move on a little bit lighter into the next one.
Yeah, I love that perspective.
It's kind of extreme, I know.
No, I like it. I mean, even just if you look at it slightly different when you were talking, having had a childhood and experienced trauma yourself, I'm thinking like a river. You know, you can either let that same experience pass through you and onto your children, and they experience the same trauma, or you can take the pain and effort that it causes to build a dam and then stop that. So it's the same, no matter how you reframe it, it's the same kind of perspective. As if you have the courage, excuse me, if you have the courage to actually, deal with this pain, look in the mirror, address it, what a beautiful gift it is to the world, to the next generation, to not pass it on. So whether, as you said, it was a penance from a previous life, or whether it's just simply watching this 7 generations, as the Native Americans have said, and here you are. I think I find it very exciting. I've said this recently. My generation, our generation, has one foot in the old ways, one foot in this new conversation, exactly like we're having now. When I say the old ways, I'm talking about modern medicine mentality, where we can now forgive everything that happened in the past, not pass it on to the front. So I see that we really are, the dam. We have the opportunity to really be this courageous generation that debunks some of the things that we were raised to believe from mental health and ancient medicine and all these things. Reframe it, work on ourselves, and then, as you said, those 7 generations ahead of us are going to benefit from it. So I think it's a great perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And thank you for validating that. It's sometimes that's why I don't talk very much about these things, because it's difficult to understand, and even more difficult to accept that we do have a role in this trauma because of past experiences and past lives.
Absolutely. Well, for people, I want to get to the Siren Project, but before we do, for people that were going to attend a retreat, what would that week look like? Give us an overview of what it would look like from, even before they arrive, any sort of preparation to, what that week experience would be. And then we could even get into the integration after as well.
Sure. In this case, they will go through a preparation that it should be at least a month out. I try to do is 3 months out, where the directors of the organization will identify the people that are able to join the retreat, because there is a process of elimination. Let's just say at the beginning, first is going to be the interview with the director, where they will realize that they have some, for example, taking some medications, or if they have some conditions that will be a contraindication for any of the medicine. And if they're able to continue on, they will go to the second step, which is the medical intake, which is a questionnaire that I send out. And based on that, they will go through the third step, which is the medical screening or safety screening. So say, for example, that Angela team, in this case, they will identify somebody that has, somebody that is taking SSRIs for say 20 years. Can somebody? Yes, they can, but they have to actually stop taking the medication and be symptom-free 2 weeks prior to the retreat. So I will say, yeah, send them to me. Then I send them the medical questionnaire, and then I will see they are more in detail what kind of medication, how long they have been taking it, and a little bit more in detail. Based on that, I will determine if they can go through the safety screening. Then they go through the safety screening with a medical doctor. Then the last step will be, hey, if you're able to get off these SSRIs with the help of your own prescriber, then we can absolutely bring you here if you're willing to taper off the medication safely. And if you have been taking medication for 20 years, you're not going to be able to do probably this in 3 months safely. But if you're taking SSRIs for 5 years, you can do that in 3 months. You can taper off the medication, be symptom-free. We can help you with some suggestions for supplementation. But know that it's going to be difficult, right? It's going to be very difficult. Physically, you're going to have all these symptoms, because literally you're going to go through withdrawal symptoms. And this is how they look like. Are you willing to do that? And if they say, yes, we can do that, okay, let's go on. Start the preparation that include their own prescriber should help them to taper off the medication. So going from a 20 milligram to like 0 milligram within 3 months, if it's possible. And then the preparation includes the dieta, which is, and a lot of people, raise an eyebrow and say like, why do you send them a dieta that is so strict? Well, because I follow a tradition that is the Mazatecan tradition to do the medicine. It means that you have to pretty much follow an anti-inflammatory detoxifying diet, which include you're not going to have red meat, so pork, alcohol, definitely no alcohol, no caffeine, pretty much wholesome, food based on grains, vegetables, fish, and chicken. And obviously, it is not only what you eat, but it's also what you hear, dieta from the electronic, from the news, the music that you listen. So it's a full dieta. It's not just only what you consume through your mouth. It's what you see, what you watch, what you hear, what you listen. Developing a practice, a practice as simple as gratitude, some spiritual practice, some mindfulness, meditation, yoga, something. And we send you all the guidelines. And then when the time comes, we have 2 preparation calling groups, and they also have some coaching that the director will set that up, with their coaches. So when they get here, they arrive one day before the retreat, and we get together that evening. We go and have dinner. We get to know each other physically. We have been already talking via Zoom, and also in a group that we have in Signal. When they get to the retreat, the next day is we get to work. We have a lot to do. So we get to work by, we do the sweat lodge. It's the first, before the sweat lodge, we do an introspective work where we encourage people to take their mask off, to allow themselves to be vulnerable, to show themselves as they are, be vulnerable, to let the guard down, because in the American society is pretty much conditioned to be very much not show emotions and to be a stoic and to be, put together and hold it together. And we encourage doing that first. And 99% of the time everybody opens up, the mask comes off, the armor comes off, and show how vulnerable we are. And this is what we're here for. So I always say, show up and speak your truth. That's all that I'm asking you right now. Show up and speak the truth. And this is a safe container, a safe environment for you to do that. That's why you're here. That's what you're here for, to do the work. So don't come to the retreat thinking that we're going to do the work for you, not even the medicine. You have to do the work. That is an understanding from the beginning, including the preparation, right? The dieta. So we do the sweat lodge, which is uncomfortable for so many people. It is long. It's about 2 hours. It is hot, incredibly hot. And people is scared to be in a small confined space in darkness. But that's the first door that we open, which is allow yourself to be uncomfortable and to be okay with the discomfort. Because we're in a society that we have a little bit of pain, we take a pill. If we are too hot, we turn the AC on. If we are too cold, we take the heat. And so everything is gotta be like immediate gratification right now, instead of like sitting with it. Let me sit with it. What is this about? So the first uncomfortable is going to be the introspective work where we take the mask off. The second one, getting in the sweat lodge. It's not easy. People is scared to death when they get in. And when you hear the healer, the people that are doing the sweat lodge, chanting and drumming inside, that's another layer of like fear factor, right? Confined space, dark, with a lot of other people, extreme heat, and native healers singing, drumming, chanting. Yeah, you have to overcome that. And it's a beautiful, powerful ceremony of cleansing and purification and overcoming. And then we have dinner, we go to bed. The next day we do medicine. But we start with a practice in the morning. So it could be some somatic-based practice, could be yoga, tai chi, could be some breath work. Then the preparation is the medical doctor gets to do the checkup, the vitals, make sure, obviously the blood pressure is going to be high because everybody's anxious, and it's okay. Then we do the flower bath, which is another cleansing ceremony. And from there, and before the flower bath, we do what is called opening the cardinal point, the rumbos, opening the rumbos, where we ask permission to the earth, the environment around us, to have a ceremony. We call the guardians of the space. We call the ancestors. And we ask the elements that are connected with one stage in our life and the cardinal points to actually support us in this journey. After that, we do the flower bath, and then immediately after that, we go into the ceremony. And the ceremony brings on traditional healers from the native tradition in Mexico. And we have live music, and the ceremonies will last between 4 and 8 hours. It will depend, But the processes are deep, very deep, beautiful, and very, they're catalyst. The medicine is a catalyst for you to decide to release those traumas. And then usually the next thing that we do is a group share, then dinner, and then we're tired, go to bed. The next day, we're going to do the second ceremony, which is one-on-one with the toad. And this is the case of the Siren Project, right? Because some other groups only do one ceremony, or maybe they will do 3 ceremonies of the same medicine. But in this case, with the Siren Project, we will do the mushrooms one day, and the next day will be the toad, which is the 5-MeO-DMT, the bufalvarius. And we get up in the morning, we do a hape ceremony, which is tobacco sniff. And we do that because it helps us to ground ourselves and to open ourselves up, to really open those energetic channels. And whatever is stuck in the body, trust me, the tobacco is pure tobacco, is going to push it out of the body. That in itself is a ceremony. It's very intense. And after that, we do medical checkups again. And then one by one, they receive the medicine again with a traditional healer, one by one. And how are they supported? In the mushroom ceremonies, you will have 3 healers, a musician, and then the cleaner, which is the copalera, who's cleaning the energies, the medical doctor, myself. So we have a ratio 1-on-1. So we have 8 people participants. We have 8 people working the space. And the same for the toad. We have at least 4 people working the space while you're receiving the medicine, including my dogs. My dogs are little curanderos. They like to sit in bed with the participants. They're really cute. And then the next day is, during the second ceremony, after they finish the toad, and that evening we will do, again, integration or share group, and then dinner. If we do have some time that evening and they're not so tired, we will do something else. If not, we're going to bed. The next day is a fun day. We get up, we do some more somatic work, then breakfast, and then I take them out on a boat ride to the beach. They go to this beautiful place where they play like children. They have so much fun. We go back to the house. We have a late lunch. Then we do another celebration, which I call it the cacao ceremony, because I serve cacao and preparing the traditional way of the Mayans and the Aztecs, the way they prepare it. And we have a celebration, which is a beautiful celebration of finishing up the ceremonies. I bring the traditional Aztec dancers and my healer, my team, they're Nahuas, and they bring their music and dances. So we're grateful for the land and for the medicine, for the Great Spirit, for the guardians, and we close the ceremonies in that way. The next day we get up, we have breakfast, hang out together, and then we're ready to go home. So it's intense, it's fast-paced, but it's beautiful.
It sounds incredible. It really does. I mean, I've seen, a couple of documentaries on some of the other, Ibogaine and some of the other facilities down there as well. But, I think you've laid it out in a way that probably reduces a bit of fear, because I think some of the fear comes from not knowing anything about it at all. But, seeing that laid out and hearing, the benefits and the journeys that people have been, especially I love to hear the 5-MeO-DMT journeys where people say they had this realization that, as you alluded to before, that we're all connected to everything, the trees and, the ocean and the rocks and, the animals, and the fear of death, the fear of our mortality kind of melting away.
Right. And I think what is missing, I guess, is, and don't, what I like to offer is the ceremony and the ritual, which are so important, um, that are lost in our modern society. We need to bring those rituals back. And that's why I said from the beginning the point of the medicine is sacred and it cannot be served in a different way. For me, my beliefs. Obviously, there is other people that are really different than me, and that's okay. Um, and I think the ceremonies and the rituals make a huge difference in the way that people receive the medicine and how deep they actually go into their own healing process and how lasting that can be.
Well, expand on that then. What are your fears? Because, for example, we all know now that in the States there are a lot of drug companies that make a lot of money synthesizing what is originally a natural product, whether it's insulin, whether it's even cigarettes. You talked about tobacco. What is in a cigarette now is engineered to be as addictive as possible versus what might have been used by the Native American a few hundred years ago. So what are your fears as far as where this could be abused, and what would the right kind of offering look like, even if it was replicated in the US, for example, but obviously ideally in the country that it originates?
So I don't know if the word is fear, what I feel. I think it's a little bit of sadness. And I have gone through a range of different emotions, right? Going from anger. Anger has been a big one. Cultural appropriation comes to mind as well, where you're taking something that, I'm not saying only native tradition can have this medicine. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, these medicines are here for all human beings to benefit from. But there is a way to offer this medicine that are honoring the ancestors and the tradition and the culture where the medicine comes from. And so first I became really angry when they're talking about the mixed feelings about the legalization process, but the synthesizing, they taking the components, or maybe becoming commercialized, or maybe it's going to be a pill, and then it's not going to be different than cigarettes in the nicotine. It's not going to be different than an SSRI, and then sadness kind of hit me a little bit, because I don't want this sacred medicine to be prostituted. That's the word. At the end of the day, it's not what I want, it's not what I feel, but I am in a point of acceptance that whatever happens is going to happen, because it's a process of human beings learning how to deal with these healing processes. And there will be always minds, human beings not connected with their own consciousness, that are acting from a place of unconsciousness to benefit, to make profit from it. I can't blame them, because they are not awake. They are not connected to consciousness. And like I said earlier, we can grab them by the arms and say, like, wake up. No, it's on their own time, their own process. What we can do is only promote in a very gentle, compassionate way, and we can be the examples. Listen, this is sacred medicine. It is here for everybody. There is a process. There's a way to do this. This is the way that you prepare yourself. These are not chemical compounds. These are not just one molecule of 5-MeO-DMT. This is not just psilocin. This is not just mescaline. This is not just ibogaine. These are plants and animals that have a spirit, that are helping us to heal, to become more aware, to wake up to consciousness, to heal ourselves, to reconnect with the higher self, to reconnect with the source. And for that process to happen, you have to follow the process which our ancestors did. So you have to clean yourself. You have to prepare yourself so that your body and your mind is ready to receive the medicine. and the spirit of the medicine to reconnect with your own spirit, where the magic happened. And together, in the case of PTSD, find the fragments of the soul that have been dispersed because of the trauma, bring it back together into your physical body so you can feel better. But can we actually do that in a society where the pill is more welcome than a process? The pill, instead of the ritual and the ceremony and the personal responsibility in this healing process, is more important. The pill, the medicine is just the catalyst. Remember what Maria Sabina says. Maria Sabina says, you are the medicine. We are the medicine. But are we willing to put the effort into reuniting with our own medicine, to get out of our head, to reunite, walk that journey to the heart, and to do the work? Not too many people is willing to do that. And of course, if somebody, pharmaceutical company, politician, whatever, is telling you, here is a quick solution for your problem, our conditioned mind is going to take that. Not everybody, but a lot of people will go that route. And I guess that is not my fear. It's just I have come to accept it. But like I said at the beginning, it's whoever needs to be here to receive the medicine in a traditional way will. And there is a space for everybody.
It does make so much sense. And it's something I've talked about recently with these GLP-1 drugs that they have for weight loss at the moment. I think they absolutely have a place in the morbidly obese, where maybe bariatric surgery was the alternative, and very, very dangerous. I've lost 2 friends because of that. But now it's being seen as a quick fix. And just to your point, let's say, I took a drug and now I've lost 100 pounds. My cardiovascular system isn't really any healthier. My mental state isn't healthier because I haven't had the discipline of going to the gym. I haven't sweat. I haven't been uncomfortable, as you said. The nutrition side, my body hasn't been satiated with all the nutrients that it needs through, the correct diet that I should have been eating. So is it a tool? Yes. Is SSRI a tool when someone's, manic or deeply, deeply depressed, just to pull them from the void? Temporarily, yeah, maybe, but it was never meant to be, as you said, a 20-year prescription. That's completely irresponsible. So I couldn't agree more. We've obviously been conditioned to need this quick fix, because this is what we're told. This is what our society is. But it's, as you said, the ceremony, the process, the location of this plant medicine. That is where the healing is. And even just to use a synthetic conversation for a moment, ketamine, where I've heard the ketamine success stories of when they're with someone who's leading them through, almost like a shaman on the ketamine side. When I've heard that it didn't work, is they just stuck it in their arm and they walked out the door and no one was guiding them. So even though that's a much more clinical example, it's the same kind of thing. It's the work that's really doing it, and the medicines are certainly assisting. But without the work, what have you got? You've got a quick fix pill, and you might feel good for a moment, but there's not that long-term gain, I'm assuming.
Right. And everything narrows back to the idea that we are in this moment, in this physical body and in this physical work, in this beautiful schoolhouse called Earth, to remember who we are, to remember where we come from, and to open ourselves up to consciousness, to understand that we are consciousness. And if we're numbing ourselves with all these, prescriptions made, all these synthetic medicines, we are closing the doors and the gates to that possibility. We are wasting one lifetime away of the possibilities of releasing karmas and layers of, trauma that we carry from this life and past one. But I also understand that some, in the case of ketamine, can break a suicidal ideation of somebody who is depressed in the moment and can't come out of it. It's a quick fix. And definitely I agree with that. But there's got to be then what is next now that I pull somebody out and you're not suicidal anymore. So let's look at what is the problem, and it is not. It's just not easy. It's a process. But are you willing to actually go through that process of exploration and to realize that what is it that you need to let go? What is it that you're stuck with? And sometimes also, are you willing to, do you want to let it go? Whatever it is that is stuck with you.
Absolutely. How did you come across Tim and Anja? And let's just talk about the Siren Project for all the first responders listening that probably didn't even realize that this was an option for them as well.
Yeah, actually, I met Angela first. Angela, she went to a retreat where I was facilitating in Rosarito, in between Tijuana and Rosarito, with another organization called The Mission Within. And I was working with Martin. Martin Polanco is the founding director of the organization. And so Angela came for the weekend. I think it was 2.5 days, 3 days, and did medicine. I was facilitating. When she came out of that retreat and that experience, she said, I need to bring this medicine to my first responders, to my people. I need to do something about it. And we stay in touch, but I think a year later, she texted me and she said, hey, I got an organization. It's called the Siren Project. And we need to talk about sending you people. So, yeah, so she did. And she sent the first group. I think it was, 3-4 years ago. I can remember now. We have done 17 tries. And so the first one that came to the retreat was try one. It was actually Tim, her husband, and a few other firefighters. They were all firefighters. And that was the first actually retreat that we did for Siren. It was beautiful. I did it in the same way that I like to do the retreats, bringing that spiritual healing into the healing process. And they love it. I mean, Angela already kind of knew my way of working, and Tim needed convincing, I guess, because he didn't know me by then. But I guess Angela told him, you need to see Andrea, and you need to see how these things are done there, and just try. And so he was sold in the idea that this is the way to do it. So I am very grateful. I absolutely love those two. They're very close to my heart. They trust me, and they send people, and they let me do run the ceremonies the traditional way, and they love it, and I'm very grateful to them.
No, it's amazing. Really is. And I think this is the conversation now is, obviously you have the whole prohibition thing up here. And from a synthetic point of view, obviously another one that seems to be working very well is MDMA-led psychotherapy as well. So that's another conversation. But for us to have the ability to come to Mexico and go through this healing, because one of the saddest things I hear in many of these interviews are people that have been presented just with, psych meds and talk therapy, and they end up sitting in front of someone through an EAP program who's just not even qualified to work with first responders. And they have this awful experience, and now they've lost hope. There's so many people that are desperate. And I know that there's several of my friends that went through the Siren Project that have been down with you, and it was absolutely life-changing. I had another firefighter introduced to me. We sent him to a different one. But the first day he said, it was stupid. It doesn't work. What a waste of time. And he was suicidal. He'd come out of alcoholism, become sober, gone back into alcoholism. And he said, day 2, the second ceremony, he said, including becoming a firefighter and the birth of my children, it was the most powerful experience he ever had. And it completely saved his life. There's no other way to describe it. So hearing the success stories firsthand of how powerful this experience is, and then obviously the ongoing integration after that, it's a ray of hope in a profession where so many people are so desperate and so hopeless. So I think it's so incredible. And, kudos to you and obviously all the generations prior that even created this in the first place, but to Angela and Tim to create something so powerful that now first responders in the US and Canada, can come down and get their healing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we are very blessed, all of us, to actually be able to find each other, and to work together to do this, to offer this place of healing for people to come and to have hope that they can have a better life, they can truly live their life from that hard space. But it's people that is really willing to do the work, you know what I mean? It's people that is willing to put the hard work into it. So yeah, I am so absolutely blessed. I absolutely love what I do. I adore Angela and Tim. I do. And all the first responders, firefighter, police officer, wow. Yeah, they have a really warm place in my heart. They know that. I tell them all the time, you're stuck with me. And I do. We have 17 tribes, we're going for the 18, and we have a group in Signal, and I am very active on that group. And I do care for each of them, each and every one of them.
Well, I'll put the links on the website. I think the Siren Project's website, if I remember, was either the Siren Project or sirenproject.org, but I'll put it on there. I think you can Google that and they're the ones that come up. Where can people find Red Path Spiritual Healing Retreats if they want to look at your website?
Oh, I have a website that I put together because I was supposed to look professional, I guess. I don't know. But I don't use it. Again, it's called the Red Path Retreat.org. But the thing is, I am not commercial. I only do these retreats for nonprofit organizations. Once in a while, I will do a retreat for all hands, meaning like self-pay, but end up being alumni from different organizations. So I don't promote the Red Path because it's not commercial. I don't do retreat and say, come to my retreat. Like I say again, the people that need to be here will be here. I don't see that's going to change. So I do have the website, but it's just for informational, I guess.
And what about veterans? Which nonprofits normally send people to you?
Vets, they send spouses. Heroic Heart Project, absolutely love Jesse.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's my boy. Jesse. And Hope is also in partnership with Heroic Heart Project that is run by Allison Wilson. I love that woman too. And she sends spouses. And for a little bit, Invisible Wound, which is Allison Wilson's husband, Jonathan Wilson's organization. And so it is this Heroic Heart Project, Hope, Vets, and Invisible Wound, and the Siren. And so the latest one is a partnership that I just developed. Actually, I'm super excited because it's my next retreat is with an organization called Save a Warrior. They have been doing a lot beautiful work, but it's a psychospiritual approach to healing. And I have known them since 2010 when I was working at NICO. I actually met the founding director, Jake. And one of those beautiful synchronicities, we reconnected and he sent somebody to observe one of my retreats. Actually, I invited Justin, which I have grown to absolutely love him too. And he observed one of my retreats with Siren, which it was an ayahuasca retreat in November, and he was fascinated. And he said, we have never done any kind of psychedelic medicine retreats, but we will with you. So now they're going to start sending people. And the first one is actually coming up now in March. So I'm super, super excited about that and see how it goes, because it's an organization that has been around forever. And we're finally actually partnering to do retreats for the alumni. So the participants are people that have gone through the Save a Warrior retreats, and now they're going to come and do medicine with me. So those are the organizations I work with.
That's amazing. It was Jake Clark that opened my eyes to the childhood trauma in our profession. So it's amazing now, with all the successes
Wow.
I've heard. I just had one of their alumni on just literally last week who uses a lot of equine therapy now as well. But to go through that and then to integrate the psychedelic medicine as well, I mean, that just sounds incredible. So it's really amazing to watch these organizations, these amazing humans now start to, cross-pollinate what they're doing.
It's kind of funny because I heard of 3 firefighters, or first responders, should I say. They just casually, they dropped, like, oh yeah, I went to the Save a Warrior. And then I heard that 2 or 3 times, and I say, Save a Warrior? It's like, is it still around? And then I got curious because I said, when I was at NICO, actually, I met Jake and I went to this place and I don't even remember. I think I did a meditation class for the retreat. I can remember 2010. So I actually sent an email to Jake and I say, hey, Jake, it's like, are you still doing retreats? Because I heard that 3 of the first responders actually have gone there. So he was like, of course I remember you. And we got the conversation going. And it's funny because he was against doing psychedelic, but the people, the alumni, have been asking for it. So he saw that I was pretty much asking him to send me people, I guess. And it's like, no, that's not my intention. Trust me, I have plenty of retreat. But I just wanted to see how are you doing and how is the organization doing. And then the next thing that I heard from him is like, by the way, I'm sending you somebody so you can show them what you do. And I was like, okay, we'll see. And then from that interaction with Justin, one of his directors, now we have 4 retreats lined up for 2026 and who knows what else next year. So like I say, it's synchronicities, people that really need to come together to be able to show and to offer these healing processes to other human beings. We come together, we find each other. There is a way. It just happens.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much. It's been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for trusting me with your story. But as we see so often, it's people that have gone through their own healing journeys that are usually, the beacons of light for everyone else. And to give up the structure and stability that you had working with the military and, grab your chihuahua and drive south and help veterans and first responders, I think it's phenomenal. So I want to thank you so, so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
No, I am grateful to you and obviously the Connectors Angel and team. It was wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I feel very honored and very humble and honored to continue working to offering this to the first responders and veterans.